So even though I was raised in a Christian home, I dealt with a lot of self-hatred as a kid and developed some addictions. Started smoking weed at a young age, led into a lot of alcohol, and through my 20s, I was introduced to a lot of other drugs, cocaine, ecstasy, and it became a daily thing for me. I played in a lot of bands and was introduced to that bar life, and that became my life, and that's what really all I cared about. I ended up meeting a girl and we got married. We had a couple kids. My first son, David, he's 8, and I had another son born 10 and a half months after David was born. And I was still dealing with addiction, alcohol, marijuana. The night before Father's Day, we were drinking, and I ended up getting pretty intoxicated, and that morning, which happened to be Father's Day in 2014, I woke up to find my 3-month-old baby had passed away. I thought that would have been a moment of surrender to Christ, but instead I went the complete opposite way. And I developed a crippling meth addiction. Instead of alcohol, I chose a different vice, a different addiction. And meth, it was my master. It ran my life, and became a daily thing. And that carried on for about 7 years. And so for 7 years of my life, I hated myself, I hated people around me, and I cared about one thing, and that was my addiction. There was a point in the middle of the darkness where I felt like I was alone. I felt like no one understood what it was like. I lost my son, so I used that as my excuse to use and to get high. I didn't realize that my brothers did lose their nephew. My mom and dad did lose their grandson. And not only that, but they were losing their own son. Finally, I came to a point where I was desperately in need of deliverance, and I surrendered my life to Christ, and He's changed everything. So I pray that this song is able to minister to you the way it's ministered to me throughout my life. God bless you.
So it was 2 weeks after we had found out about the passing of my nephew, Dustin, and it had really put our whole family in a tailspin, because for years and years we had been praying for Drew's deliverance from the vices and the addictions that had held him. And I lead worship up at these camps up at Forest Home in the summers, and 2 weeks after Father's Day I found myself up here just really broken, and I was sitting right here on this stage at the piano, and I was reading through Psalm 107 as I was praying for this season of deliverance for my little brother. And so I read through this psalm, and it came alive. It says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, for His loving kindness is everlasting. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom He has redeemed from the hand of the adversary, and gathered from the lands, from the east, from the west, from the north to the south. They wandered in the wilderness, in a desert region. They did not find a way to an inhabited city. They were hungry and thirsty, and their souls fainted within them. But then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them out of their distress." And it was that came alive to me, thinking my little brother needs deliverance. And we thought that maybe this broken season, this tragedy, would drive him to the Lord. And when we watched him go darker into his addictions, we all became helpless. But I had this deep hope and desire in my life to see my little brother delivered. And so that day when I was sitting here at the piano, I wrote this song called "He Delivered Me" from Psalm 107, with hopes that someday my little brother would be able to sing that as his deliverance song. And here we are, to where he gets to share how God delivered him from something that seemed hopeless to so many, and seeing his life transformed and changed. So that's what this song is about.
wander through the desert, lost beyond all measure, I had gone astray. Thirsty, longing for the river, flowing from your mountain, it seems so far away. So I cried out from my soul, I reached out to the Holy Father, who is faithful to reply. And he delivered me from my death in the desert, and he led me to his grace. He delivered me from the storm and the wreckage, and he carried me away. Always you are strong to save me, faithful though I'm failing, following your ways. Your love is patient and unchanging, selfless and enduring. With you I choose to stay. And so I cry out from my soul, I reach out to my Holy Father, who is faithful to reply. And he delivered me from my death in the desert, and he led me to his grace. Yeah, he delivered me from the storm and the wreckage, and he carried me away. So my soul cries out with a grateful heart. He gave it all for me, for all eternity. So my soul cries out with a grateful heart. He gave it all for me, for all eternity. My soul cries out with a grateful heart. He gave it all for me, for all eternity. Yeah, my soul cries out with a grateful heart. He gave it all for me, for all eternity. He delivered me from my sin and my sorrow, and he washed it all away. He delivered me from the guilt in the darkness, for his faithfulness is great. And he delivered me from my death in the desert, and he led me to his grace. Yeah, he delivered me from the storm and the wreckage, and he carried me away. Carried me away. Lord, he washed it all away.
Justin and Drew are good friends of mine, and had the privilege of having Justin grow up in our church. He is now the director of a ministry called Likewise Worship, where they pour into the lives of young worship leaders and emerging worship leaders, and are trying to change the face of worship in America, to bring us to a biblical foundation of how we sing and worship in our churches. So I keep bringing you back to a common thing. I don't know if you noticed that, but all of a sudden we're talking about forgiveness, and now we're talking about God redeeming us. Because there's a direct connection there, you guys. Your desire and ability to forgive others is going to be directly related to your understanding of God's forgiveness in your own life. That's the impetus. That's the motivation. That's the why behind why we do it. And forgiveness is one of the greatest demonstrations of love that we have. And I think it's where love gets violated in the greatest degree in our church today. You know, the great commandment, Matthew 22 says, we're to love God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind, and our neighbor as ourselves. And I'm convinced we violate love through lack of forgiveness and the bitterness that we have in our heart. And I don't see the church teaching on it. I will disciple people who have been believers for years, and we take them through this forgiveness stuff. They go, why have I not ever heard this before? Once you see it, it's everywhere in Scripture. Look at Colossians 3:12 through 14. And it should be right there in the front of your this session 3. So, as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another, and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Okay? Let's just unpack this for a second. So as those who have been chosen by God, holy and beloved, put on a heart... Stop. How are we described there? You guys, we read this passage and we skip over this. There's 3 things that describe us there as believers. What's the first one? We're chosen. Okay, stop there a minute. Do you get this? Out of the millions of people in the world, out of the millions of people in the United States, out of the millions of people that live in Michigan, out of the thousands of people that live on this side of the state, out of the hundreds of people that live in Linden, notice I didn't go thousands there, I went 100. Out of the 100 people that live in your subdivision, the people that live on your street, God chose you. Now, I don't know you very well, but I do know this. God didn't choose you because you were so choosable. He didn't put his love on you because you were so lovable. I love what Deuteronomy 7 says. God says to the nation of Israel, I didn't choose you because you were the greatest of the people. I chose you because you were the fewest. God chose you. That should blow us away. The God of the universe, out of all these people, chose you. Okay, how else are we described in this verse? Holy. He chose you, and then he set you apart. Do you know why he set you apart? He set you apart to be special, and to be special so that you could put him on display through your changed life. Why? Because God is on a mission, and that mission is to reveal himself and his glory, and he does that through you. And he set you apart for that purpose. How's the third description we're given here? Loved. This God of the universe chose you and set you apart and loves you. You know what that means? I don't need a wife that loves me. I don't need a wife that respects me. I don't need kids that obey me. I have everything I need for life and godliness, Peter tells us, through a true knowledge of Jesus. And that word true knowledge is important. It's epignosko, real knowledge, true knowledge. And in that word, whenever the gnosis, knowledge, has the true knowledge in front of it, it assumes a relationship between the one known and the thing known. Okay, so let me translate. We have everything we need for life, okay, on the horizontal level, and everything we need for godliness in the vertical level through a true, real, experiential, vital relationship with Jesus. Do you know why maybe you don't feel you got everything you need? Because maybe you don't have a true, real, vital, experiential relationship with Jesus. That's why we keep coming back to that. So now, see, I have everything I need. I don't need a wife that respects me. So you know what that does? That puts me in the position now where I can unconditionally love other people with no expectation of return because I don't need anything from them because I got everything I need here. The problem is we keep looking horizontally for what we can only get vertically. So, I got everything I need. So you know what I can do? I can put on a heart of compassion, kindness, and humility, and gentleness and patience. I can bear with others. I can forgive them. Anything, whatever complaint it is. It doesn't matter if it's some big gross sin. Okay, this doesn't happen, but say my wife, when she takes a shower at night, leaves the towel laying on the middle of the bathroom floor, so when I get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I trip over it. Now, is it a sin for her to leave that towel in the middle of the bathroom floor? No. Does it tick me off? Yeah. See what I do? I forgive her for leaving the towel laying in the middle of the floor. That's a complaint. Do you see how practical this gets? And then over all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Okay, here's what I want you to do. We've got a double-sided brick wall. Okay, I need my helpers just a minute just to stand by the wall. Stand by your side of the wall. And by the way, I didn't pick them to stand on a certain side of the wall based on the words on their bricks. Yeah. But if they're appropriate, that was the Holy Spirit, not me, all right? All right, so let's think of Jim. Which side of the wall do you think Jim needs to start with? His side. Well, that makes sense because in Matthew 7 we read, worry about the log in your own eye before you worry about the toothpick in your brother's eye, right? So it would make sense that Jim would start with his side of the wall, and then Denise would start with her side of the wall. Wrong. Here's why. Let's think of Jim now. So Denise, you can sit down. You're all set. We're going to talk about Jim and what Jim needs to do here. Now, see, here's the problem. As long as both sides of these walls are here, which side of the wall do you think Jim is going to have a tendency to focus on? Her side. And you know what Jim will do with all of these things on her side of the wall? He will use those to justify every single one of the things he's put on this side of the wall. So you know where Jim needs to start? Over here. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something in the rest of this session and the next session that you're going to feel really uncomfortable with. Okay? Because here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of a difficult relationship you have in your life right now. And for most of you that are married, it's probably your spouse. Okay? It may not be. You may have another really, really difficult relationship in your life, but it's probably your spouse. Because they've got the greatest opportunity to sin against you, and you've got the greatest opportunity to sin against them. So here's what we're going to have Jim do. We're going to have Jim start with this side of the wall. Thanks, Jim. You can sit down as you start working on this side of the wall, okay? Now what I want you to do is this. You're thinking of that person, probably your spouse, okay? I want you to take that handout that we were just given and go to the back page, and I want you to think of things that you need to forgive that person for. What are the bricks they have put on their wall between you and them? Okay? And start writing those down. Anything that you can think of. And according to our Colossians verse, it said any grievance. So think of it this way. Think of the first time time you had relationship with this person. List anything they've done or said that has had a negative impact on your relationship. Okay? And start writing those down. And we're going to give you time to do this right now. Now, if you run out of things to write down, flip the page over, and you got 5.5 pages of list of things that potentially you might need to forgive somebody for. And go through that list and check anything that's true of them. You guys, we gave you a special list up here on the front row. Did you know that? You're special. Yeah, let's go. You're special. We gave a special list for you guys, okay? Because here, okay, I'll just tell you, I'm assuming with our front row here that the difficult person in their life is either one of their parents or a good friend. So we got stuff on their list that potentially they might need to forgive their parents for. Okay? So they got a different list than you do because of where their relationships and where they're at right now. So if anything is true on that list of this other person, check it. Check it. Check it. We're going to, now, you guys, I'm asking you to do something almost impossible here. When we disciple somebody, we may take 3 sessions with them just to do what I'm asking you to do in the next 25 minutes. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a little taste of this and a little taste of what we do. But to really do this right, it really requires a lot more work than what you're going to have time to do. So hopefully what I'm going to give you in our time together is kind of a roadmap of how to do this and the tools and resources you need to do this. But it's just a start. We're just giving you, this is like the movie trailer, okay? It's a taste. So that's what I want you to do. We're going to give you the next 20 to 25 minutes to come up with everything you can off of just from your memory, this other person that you need to forgive and things they've done. Okay? If you are doing a list on your spouse, don't look at your spouse's list, please. Please don't do that. Okay? So write it all down. We're going to give you about 20 minutes or so to do that. I'm going to tell you then what we're going to do with this list. Let's stand together and read this out loud, okay? You ready? Here we go. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father who is in heaven will also forgive your transgressions. Thanks. You may be seated. Okay, what things are we supposed to forgive according to this verse? Anything. Okay? I did a really extensive study in the Greek to try to find out what this really meant. And here's my conclusion. It means anything. Whom are we supposed to forgive? Anyone. But what my uncle did to me was very evil. Is that anything? Is that anyone? Is that really, 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 really hard? Yeah. So see, back to your question, an unbeliever doesn't have the Holy Spirit and the impetus and the reason to go into those kind of spaces because it's too hard. This is hard stuff, you guys. Forgive anyone. Why? So that your Father who is in heaven will forgive you. We're going to look at this a little bit more tomorrow morning in our sermon on this connection between our forgiveness of others and God's forgiveness of us. There's something here I never saw in this verse before. What is the activity in which you're engaged when you forgive? Oh, when you stand praying. See, forgiveness is not an issue between me and the other person at all. When I stand praying, I forgive. This is an issue of me and my heart, and it's between me and God. It's not even the other person. Reconciliation has to do with you and the other person. Forgiveness is an issue between me and God, and it's my heart. And you say, well, if they come and ask, I'll forgive them. And that's a pretty popular theme that's happening right now in a lot of the Christian books that are written on forgiveness. If somebody, you don't forgive unless somebody comes and asks. Well, I don't see that in this verse. Now, I'm not going to grant forgiveness to somebody unless they ask, but I'm going to forgive them because that's between me and God. And then if they do ever come and ask for forgiveness, hey, it's really easy to grant forgiveness because I've already released them from my bitterness, wrath, and judgment, even though they deserved it. So at that point, granting forgiveness to them is really easy. So I don't have to wait until somebody comes and asks. Could Larry wait until his dad came and asked to forgive? No. Could Larry ever reconcile with his dad? No. His dad's dead. Could Larry forgive his dad? Yes. Okay? So forgiveness is an issue of my heart. It's between me and God. When you stand praying. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to do something that's even more uncomfortable. Because we've got this list on this person. What do we do with it? Well, when you stand praying, forgive. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Some of you didn't do a list. That's okay. Some of you couldn't think of somebody that you need to forgive. Okay, you're not at that place yet. That's fine. And maybe you didn't do any of the checklists or anything. That's okay. I don't want to guilt you into doing something that in your heart you're not ready to do, and that's fine, okay? But here's what I'm going to do. If you did a list on somebody, we're going to scatter here in the room, and I want you to connect with another believer, men with men, women with women, okay? Men with men and women with women. If you didn't do a list, somebody may still connect with you, and you can get in groups of 2 or 3, no more than 3. Okay? Men to men, women to women. Now, if a person in your group didn't do a list or doesn't feel comfortable doing this, all you have to say is, I'm just not, at this point, I'm not ready to do this. That's fine. No judgment, no nothing, okay? That's okay. But what I want to encourage you to do is with this list now, we're going to pray through it. And here's what you do. It's a real simple thing. You go, I forgive whoever the person is forgiving for whatever you wrote down. Okay? You're identifying the bricks. So Jim would pray, I forgive Denise for being judgmental. Then he goes to the next thing. I forgive Denise for creating conflict. Now, guys, here's what we found. The more specific you get in identifying the bricks is often the same degree of freedom that you feel from the bitterness of it. I don't have a chapter and verse on that. That's just what we have found in our experience with people. 2 things we found. One, the more specific you get, the more freedom people find from these things. And second, when you pray through this in front of another person, I don't know why, but God seems to do something a little bit different there. And I don't know if it's a greater humility that it takes or if it's greater accountability that comes in it. All I know is that when you pray through these things in front of somebody, it makes a big difference. Janet would be really upset with the kids. And she'd pray to forgive them, and she's still ticked off at them. So she stopped by the office and said, I got to pray through some stuff on the kids. She would pray through those individual things on the kids just like she did by herself, and God would free her from the bitterness. I don't know how that works. I don't have a chapter and verse why that works. We just, in our experience, have found that it does. So what I want you to do is get in groups of 2 or 3, men with men, women with women, and you're going to pull out your list, and you're going to pray through it in front of these other people, out loud. And that, man, this is going to stretch some of you. And I realize what I'm asking you to do is really awkward. Now, you're praying through this list, and you go, but it feels like I'm praying through a list. It feels wooden. Well, yeah, that's because you're praying through a list. Okay, it's going to feel a little wooden and a little awkward. That's okay. Okay, so we're going to give you about the next 20 minutes or so to do that. And then when you're done praying in your group, then you can just excuse yourself off and we'll head over toward lunch. I got one thing to share with you. Can you put the slide up on the threefold commitment? Should be a thing that starts with a threefold commitment. Okay, so you're going to release them from your bitterness and wrath or judgment. Okay, what does that look like? How do I act on that? I forgive this person. Do I go to them and say, hey, I just wanted you to know, here's a list of things I just forgave you for. Wow, that's really going to help reconciliation happen, isn't it? Okay? No. Okay, you're making a threefold commitment. Here's the threefold commitment we're asking you to make when you say I'm releasing. Number 1 is I'm not going to bring this up to the offender again unless admonishment is needed. Okay, so there's a caveat there. Now watch this. Here's how we bring up the offense to people. We use words like always and never. And when Janet and I first were taught this, I could not believe the next time we had that moment of intense fellowship and we were really going after it, I could not believe how many times I said, Janet, you always do this. And she said, yeah, but you never do this. See, when I say always, you did it here, you did it here, you did it here, you did it here, and you're doing it again. Well, you never do this. You didn't do it here, you didn't do it here, you didn't do it here, you're not doing it again. That's bringing up the past. So you're making a commitment not to bring it up to the offender again, unless God leads you to admonish them, which is a whole separate thing and a whole separate seminar. Okay, number 2, I will not bring it up to others in the form of gossip and venting. When I bring up somebody else's sin against me to somebody else, what is it I'm looking for? Validation, allies, sympathy, justification. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bring it up to others, again, in the form of gossip or venting. Number 3, I'm not going to dwell on it myself by having a pity party. So you forgive somebody and you release them, and tomorrow you start thinking about this whole list of all these things you checked, and you're saying, oh man, I must not have really forgiven. No, you forgave, but what you did is you took it back again. That's not lack of forgiveness. That's lack of acting on your forgiveness. Okay, see how that works? So then what I want you to do is, okay, you're going to split in groups of 2 or 3. Pray through, have somebody volunteer to start and pray through your list in front of the other guys. When you're done and you're on your way to lunch, there's going to be a wastebasket right by the door. What you do as you go through the door on your way to lunch is you take that list and you're going to rip it up and you're going to put it in that wastebasket. Because, see, we're not going to bring it up again. We're not going to bring it to others. We're not going to dwell on it because you know what love does? Love covers a multitude of sins. So you're going to rip that list up in the wastebasket on your way to lunch.